In this video, I will tell you the story of a serial killer whose case is ranked 21st among the most heinous serial killer crimes in the world. Today's serial killer was not just an ordinary killer, but he was a first-class child killer. And what you will hear in this video is indeed extremely painful, and among of all the stories of serial killers in the world, I have never read or heard anything as horrific as this story, which actually happened in Egypt. The upcoming events are very difficult, so please keep your children away or put on your headphones. On November 27, 2006, some railway workers found the skeletal body of a child lying in one of the tunnels. It was clear that he had been there for a long time. In the same month, the body of another child was discovered at the Alexandria train station. Hours later, the body of another child was discovered next to it. Water tanks next to Tanta train station. What caught the attention of the police and investigators at that time was, first, that all the bodies belonged to street children, and therefore, there were no reports of disappearances or absences, and because they had no families to care for them. Secondly, it was forensically proven that all the bodies had been raped before being killed, and thirdly, all the bodies were found next to train stations, which certainly means that the perpetrator is the same person and is repeating his crime in different places. The police began investigating homeless children around different train stations until a member of the thug gang was arrested. He made his confessions and said, "We are the ones who kill children and throw them on the railway. We are a gang led by Ramadan el-Turbini, the leader and boss of street children in Egypt. If you made it here, I ask that you subscribe, like, and leave a comment so I can keep making exciting and scary stories around the world." Ramadan Abdel Rahim Mansour. Ramadan was born in 1980 in a family below the poverty line, and when the child became 12 years old, he traveled to the capital, Cairo, to work there in one of the popular cafes next to the capital's train station. I want to tell you that the kingdom of street children always has a leader, and he is whoever imposes his control over them and takes royalties from them to leave them working in safety. And whoever refuses to pay the royalty had a fate similar to what you will learn during the following story. And since Ramadan worked next to the train station, his destiny was for the leader at the time to be a person called Abdou al-Turbini. By the way, the name Turbini came from the name of a French-made train that was given this name due to its speed. We return to Ramadan, who was 12 years old, and whose destiny was to pay the royalty for humiliating a person. And it sometimes reached the point of paying all his day's fare. So Ramadan was annoyed once and gathered all his wages. He gained courage and went to Abdou al-Turbini to ask him to return his money. The man got angry with Ramadan and decided to lure him onto the turbo train and told him to come there, and I will give you everything you want. Indeed, Ramadan got on the train at the appointed time, so there was no Abdou al-Turbini, except that he beat Ramadan, broke his ribs, then raped him, and finally threw him off the train. The effect of this incident was that Ramadan went to the hospital in a critical condition, which caused him disability in his eyes. When he was asked about the perpetrator, he told them his name, Abdou al-Turbini. The police later arrested him, but he got out easily due to insufficient evidence. What was occupying Ramadan's mind at the time was how he would take revenge on Abdou al-Turbini. But unfortunately for humanity, Abdou al-Turbini was killed in an accident. He was hit by a speeding car and died instantly. It was a just punishment for this criminal, but this was not the case. Ramadan is astonished because he is unable to take revenge with his own hands, so he decides to become the new Turbini and put all his malice and hatred into the 12-year-old children, the age at which he was raped. He decided to do to them what Turbini had done to him before. Ramadan formed a gang of homeless children ranging in age from 14 to 15 years old. He took from al-Turbini his nickname and his deeds as well, and made the roofs of the trains the official headquarters for all the misdeeds and crimes you can imagine: murder, theft, rape, drug use, and of course taking royalties from street children and those who did not agree to pay. To him, it was as if he had condemned himself to death. They would lure him to the roof of the train and, under the threat of sharp weapons, they would rape him one by one. They would tie him up and wait for the train coming from the other side to throw him onto the railway tracks to be crushed and cut into pieces, and the crime would be recorded as an ordinary run-over accident. In an unexpected surprise, the turbocharged Ramadan was the cause of a train accident that occurred on October 19, 1998. When Ramadan was feeling somewhat bored and indifferent, he decided to tamper with one of the mechanical parts of the train that connects the cars together and jumped into one of the agricultural lands. Minutes later, the disaster occurred, and one of the train cars separated and left. It went off course and stormed a popular market. In that incident, 58 people were killed and 122 others were seriously injured. In the 2000s, Ramadan became addicted to crime and murder. If one of his gang members found the father of a homeless child who had the characteristics that al-Turbini wanted, they would lure him, rape him, and then kill him. It became normal for him. In 2003, one of al-Turbini's men was arrested, and Ramadan went crazy because he wanted to know who had led the police to his man, and he began searching for the perpetrator until he found him. He was a child who was hungry for Muhammad Kamal. Ramadan gathered 6 of his gang's men and headed to the area where he worked. They took the poor child with it and took him to one of the subway tunnels and continued to rape him for 3 hours. The poor person was unable to scream or call for help, as he knew his fate if he did that. After the monsters finished their hideous party, al-Turbini asked them to leave him alone with the child for a little while, so he got up. He raped him again, tied him up, and beat him until he died after smashing his head with a large rock. This is the child whose body was discovered 3 years later. In May 2005, in a cafe next to the Alexandria train station, some members of the Turbini gang were sitting and taking drugs. The small cafe worker did not go and called the police, and they were later arrested in an ambush. However, they were released due to lack of evidence, and as soon as the criminals left, they went to... The child was a coffee shop worker, and they lured him to the bottom of a bridge and assaulted him with white weapons until he almost died. Then they tied his feet and legs, and Ramadan used a spoon and gouged out the poor child's eye. Then they threw old papers and cartons on him and a little gasoline and set him on fire, the devil, embodied in that monster called Ramadan Turbini. In May 2006, Ramadan lured one of the poor children called Ibrahim. He took him to one of the cemeteries under the pretext of holding a drug party, and without warning, Ramadan beat Ibrahim and ordered his men to rape Ibrahim. And then Ramadan tied him up and threw him inside one of the open graves and left him there to meet his terrifying fate. In shock, the gang members did not believe what their leader had done, and to that be added, Ramadan al-Turbini, a new method of killing and crime. In November 2006, Mohammed Naji, one of the victims of the Turbini gang, escaped, arriving miraculously to inform the police. Ramadan was arrested due to the lack of evidence. Unfortunately for poor Naji, Turbini came out to take Mohammed Naji and his gang members on their last trip on a train heading to the city of Tanta. They got off the train. In a remote area full of water tanks, there Ramadan and his gang raped the poor child from Friday morning to Saturday morning, a full day of torture, rape, and all the brutality your mind can imagine. Then he tied him up, dragged him to a water tank 30 meters high from the ground, and threw him from the ground. There, coldly, the child fell dead. This would be the last victim before one of his gang members was finally arrested, and he made a full confession. Ramadan al-Turbini was finally arrested on December 13, 2006, and sentenced to death by hanging. He was one of his gang members, and the rest of the gang members. Prison sentences ranging from 30 and 40 years.